Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of how to pick a teacher, right? How to pick a teacher, not how to find one, but how to pick one. This is about selecting, right? Finding, that's a whole different karma. So a little bit different title, how to pick your teacher, part 2. It's part 2 of that series. We'll change the title after to make it match the other one. Okay, so while some people are still coming on board, I see there's about 5 or 6 of you on here already. We'll open the mandala since I want this to be a formal teaching, and we'll go from there, from where we left off last time. Here we go. I'm going to use the bell, so if you need to turn down your volume. Three ohms, unifying body, speech, and mind for class today. Opening into a state of openness to receive, to grow in wisdom and knowledge, to guide our path to fruition for the benefit of all beings. We'll do the short invocations of Ganesha, Saraswati, and the Guru lineage, covering the right, left, and middle channels as well. Om Gang Ganapate Namaha, Om Gang Ganapate Namaha, Om Gang Ganapate Namaha, Aum Shring Hring Glang Gling Gloung Mahaganapataye Namaha. Removing all inner and outer obstacles. Left channel, Ma Saraswati, invocation of pure wisdom, white bindu. Om Aing Saraswatya Namaha, Om Aing Saraswatya Namaha, Om Aing Saraswatya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Aing 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 Maha Saraswatya Namaha. The Gurus. Om Aing Gurubhyo Namaha, Om Aing Gurubhyo Namaha, Om Aing Gurubhyo Namaha. The root Guru lineage master Machandanatha Konkanamba. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Harmonizing inner and outer 5 elements. Om Lang Vang Rang Yang Hang Om. Om Lang Vang Rang Yang Hang Om. Prana Prana Shuri Shuri Shuranaye Swaha. Om Prana Prana Shuri Shuri Shuranaye Swaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. Let's pick up from where we left off last time. There were 2 good questions that were sent via email, I think, or something like that. and that's why I didn't get them. So we'll keep the questions for the end of each one of these series. This way I make sure to include them, but these were good questions. So I want to go to them now. Matthew is asking if it is helpful to submit in advance. The question he's saying, how does one's age affect and influence the choice of teacher and path? Mainly those in midlife that have accumulated plenty of life experiences. The prerequisites in Kabbalah come to mind. As always, thank you. Okay, so this is a great question. How does age, etc., influence choice of teacher and path? Let's say I'm 50 years old and my body's not, I wasn't a star athlete and I didn't keep up with all of my yoga and all that kind of thing. Then basically, if I meet some master and I think, wow, this master is fantastically realized, and I ask them, what is their methodology? And they say, my methodology is Kundalini Hatha Yoga. You got to do 4 or 5 hour sessions a day. It may not be the best fit, right? So I have to consider my situation in life. Also, I have to consider if I have obligations in society and I can't go away and retreat and do all the yoga retreats and so on, this kind of thing. So yes, age does have an influence on our choice of teacher. It's something we have to take into account. That's why I always say, find which ideology you like, Vajrayana, Dzogchen, Shaivism, whatever it is. And then within those, or Trikamasa yoga like ours, where it's all of them in one, within those, then you look and you say, okay, I want to find someone in this tradition. Then it's a little bit more narrowed down. Then you find someone who, as we'll go into later, matches your personality better, or the style of learning for you, and that kind of thing, right? If you're super sensitive, you wouldn't want to go for someone who's lambasting you all the time, urging you on like a coach in sports or something. It would be too much. But anyway, the question mostly, Matthew, focusing on here is, how does age affect and influence the choice of teacher and the path? So yeah, I think this has to be taken into consideration. But one thing I think people do is write themselves off too quickly, too easily. Oh, I'm so old. I could never excel at the path. I could never really make it. So I'm going to not really give it a go. I'm not really going to look for a teacher. I'm just going to be happy doing my prayers and get a better life next time. And that's okay. Really, it really is okay, because everything will work out and you will get a better life next time if you try to transform yourself a bit on personality level and stick to praying a lot and so on. But I don't think anybody should ever really count themselves out on the path simply due to age, to be honest. And then, of course, if we're in an age where, we don't have that many years left, let's say, we really don't know when we're going to die, but let's just pick the average median age, right, for mortality in the States. For a man, it's about 72 and a half or 3, I think. And for a woman, I think it's around 74 and a half or so. So if I'm 55, I've got 20 years left. And how many of those years are very good, useful, productive years of practice? I don't know. Maybe all of it, because I'm super healthy up until the time I die, maybe not. So in that case, I would want to pick, again, the criteria I went through is very important for this so far. I'd want to have a teacher who has the experience. There's no time for BS anymore. I don't have a time for scholars who never did practice and, sit up there and pontificate like they're realized. I don't have time for that stuff. Or, practitioners who fake their history or something. It's just no time. So you want someone who definitely has the practice history and the experience of attainment. And then the second thing we went through as well, you really want to make sure, if you don't have that much time left, that there's a very clear, comprehensive system. So you're not wandering for 5-6 years trying to put together the system, because many teachers have just this huge bag collection of techniques. But where is it going and how does it get you there, right? It's not enough to teach philosophy over here, then a bag of practices over here. There has to be a cohesion. The view teachings and the practices should all go together smoothly in this way and produce realization. Maybe. So I think when you're older, that becomes important, right? Efficiency, clarity of the system, the comprehensive nature of the system. I wouldn't get with a teacher who can get me like 1 out of the 4 levels of, say, way of meditation that we teach, meditation. And then I got to go back and look again for the next 3 somewhere else. There may not be enough time. Try to find someone who can take it a whole way. But then again, If that takes, it's taken more than a year or two, then you might want to think, maybe I should start with somebody just to get going. So that's kind of, I think, how we have to approach it. Okay. It's a for whom and when thing, but yes, age is a definite factor. And when you're middle age and you've accumulated a lot of life experiences, I think there's a lot of teachers that have a lot of young students who put together practices and exercises and demand a lot from the person to show their commitment, their loyalty, and their maturity and so forth. Or like you mentioned, Kabbalah, Matthew, Kabbalah is like 40 years old. We used to have a rule a long time ago. 40 years old, kids, having had kids, and a mortgage. So it's not a hard rule, but it was kind of like, well, 40 years old, kids, and a mortgage, we kind of can confirm that, okay, you've got your act together enough to be stable enough to own a house, pay off a mortgage. Means you got to keep a steady job, and to raise children and teach and educate children. All these kind of things show that you're kind of balanced, right? And you're 40 years old. You've been through life experiences. So you can pretty much dive in on that point. Now, that was true when I was growing up. I'm 58, right? And that was true when I was growing up. But nowadays, even somebody who's 40, I find a lot of people are much flakier now. So much flakier now than ever before. And, it's all the reasons that we know. Postmodernism, social media world, all this stuff makes people much less able to commit. There's just so many options to distract people. We were just thinking about it yesterday. Sukali and I were talking. There's just, in the old days, we had so much time. We had a phone answering machine, and we would come home at the end of the day and check if anyone called. If anyone did, you'd listen to it, and you might get back to them or not, or just write a note and get back to them another day. It wasn't like everyone checking their phone every second. There's no space for your mind anymore. There's no space for anything really anymore. And you have to, when you take up sadhana, you have to make a clear decision. When you take up the spiritual path, you have to make this decision when you take a teacher. I'm going to make space. It means other things have to go. And what I'm finding is that people 40 plus are still hooked on social media or porn or entertainment or, whatever it is. And they still have a hard time letting go. So the rule of 40 years old, mortgage, et cetera, it's kind of tough to have a rule like that anymore. But your point is taken. If you have a lot of life experiences already, you don't need to go through the ringer, especially if you're kind of a tough nugget. You're a bit of a tougher person. You don't crumble the first time any kind of adversity comes, which is another big thing. I saw one post that went up about the current coronavirus pandemic going around. And someone said, our generation right above us and back, I can always hear my grandmother's voice. They had to go through world wars, right? All we're asking, they had to go off to war. And all we're being asked to do is stay home. And people are freaking out about staying home. They can't do it. I can't do it. It's too much, So we're not the same kind of people. We're not as tough as we used to be. I was watching Joe Rogan and what's his name from New York? Not Bill Maher, but Bill Burr, very great comedian from New York. And Bill Burr was just saying, look, I just grew up in a tougher era. He's closer to my age, a little younger than me. It was a tougher era back then. People were tougher. That's just true. It's just the way it is. So, I would like to say it's a for whom and when question again. But of course, if you have a lot of life experience, you can accelerate everything as well. Okay. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Feather Kelly asked something too. My question, she says, if you have dreams about the teacher in relation to teachings on karmic bonds, is that a good sign? Particularly if you prayed about receiving a sign. Let me get this right. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. If you have dreams about the teacher in relation to teachings on karmic bonds. So if you're having a dream about a teacher and the teacher is teaching about karmic bonds, which I'm not sure what that really means to you, Feather. Maybe that means that you're karmically related to somebody through past life, like we see in charts or something. Is that a good sign? A good sign of what? A good sign that that's your teacher, a good sign that you're on the right path? Not really sure. I'm going to let you, I feel it's a sign, but it may be wrong. I'll tell you what, let's let you refine that one and we'll come back to that, okay? Okay, because I don't want to answer it incorrectly and waste time on it if I don't know how the right answer, right question in my mind. So Feather can help us with that and we'll come back. All right. Now, let me get back to this at hand. Let's now go into the part 2 proper of how to pick a teacher, the material for this. And again, at the end, I'll handle questions like we did last time, okay? And last time people said there was a lot of reflection on the glasses, so I'm going to take them off after I read some of the notes I put to myself to vamp on. Okay, this is characteristic number 6, or thing to consider number 6 in my list when I'm going to pick a teacher. Did the person start the sect themselves? Did they create it themselves? This is a big no-no for me, because you don't know. It might, it takes at least 3-4 generations to see if people are getting enlightened in that tradition or more. So I wouldn't go personally with any new revelations, new sect, new tradition. I just like my bets to be a little bit safer than that. That's a big risk, I think, a very big risk. Like recently, I heard about this group that is merging kind of Orthodox Gnostic Christianity, Eastern Orthodox and Gnostic Christianity with Dzogchen. They believe, this guy believes that he has had all these transmissions about this from the Christ, whatever that is to him. And he's also trained in Dzogchen, but he's not a Lama, so it's kind of weird in that way. So, he wasn't really authorized to teach. So he's got this new thing going. And he's attracting a lot of people because he's writing really sweet, loving stuff, really Christian sounding, lovey, sweet stuff. So, yeah, whatever. Maybe that's going to get light bodies. Maybe he'll have a light body, but I personally wouldn't go for it until I saw that kind of proof, that kind of result there already. And in this also, there's another group doing a lot of Hindu-like stuff. So you see startups that are, it's definitely not a classical Indian tantric tradition or Indian yogic tradition. The person didn't learn from their guru, isn't handing it down just like they got it from their guru. And yet it looks Indian-like, looks Hindu-like, and they might have trained with a few people from India, and they started their own school of the Atma Yoga International Society, whatever, and you see a lot of this, a tremendous amount of this. And a lot of people like to posture as if, that's really okay to do. And from a traditional standpoint, yeah, it's okay if 4 or 5 generations from now, people are getting light body again. But it's not really okay in that it would happen so rarely in the ancient world. And I think this is something we have to continually consider. So rarely in the ancient world would somebody be so possessed by their own natural essence that they would become spontaneously a realized master and spontaneously give teachings. This is so important to get, because this is the popular thing now. Everybody wants to be a teacher. Nobody wants to be a student, right? You see so much of that. So you see many Hindu-esque kind of that as well. Then there's the old stuff, the old tradition also being put forward as a startup. So again, someone like, let's say, very inspired, reads a lot of the ancient texts, does a little practice here and there, but they're going to stick to something. They're going to be a Krama teacher, a Kaula teacher, a Trika teacher, a Dzogchen teacher, a Celestial Master Taoist teacher. They're going to stick right in one vein and be a staunch traditionalist of that vein of the practice and teaching, whatever. They're really into it, but they have no history, no background. I'm chuckling because I just reminded myself, a memory surfaced of, there was somebody, probably shouldn't say who, but because I think the guy was well-meaning, and this is the thing, well-meaning is different than real, okay? He didn't have a background, but he put himself out as a really big acharya of a tantric Shaivist, Vedic Shaivist, I think you would call it, of a kind of tradition, and started temples and took in hundreds of students, and they lived together as a community, and had a magazine that was out all over the world. And it was a really good magazine, actually, and the stuff was good. And he was very much in one tradition, very much going down one tradition, one traditional way. And the way he talked, the way he presented himself, the way he wrote, his temples were so beautiful and perfectly maintained. His students were so well trained, rituals done so well, teachings, meditation. You would think for sure he was the real deal. And it came out later that, he wasn't, that he didn't have real training. He had no real lineage, I think he was in Christian seminary school or something in Jewish training to be a rabbi or something, and switched over and had done that a few times with different religions and found this one and then stuck with it. But it was all his own thing. But man, really inspired person. But I wouldn't go with that. Again, I wouldn't go with it because is the lineage power flowing through that person or not? Maybe. really may be, you know, I'm not judging. I don't know. But the thing is, I don't know. That's the whole point. So I can't go with it. So I'd avoid old stuff that looks like startups as well. His students didn't know that they believed his background. Let's see. Gurus or mediums chosen by the goddess. Here's another big category today. You have people who say they had a vision of the goddess or the god. They had a vision of some lineage master, or they're psychically in tune with them all the time as a medium. And they are the chosen mouthpiece for this lineage or this goddess on the planet, or at least one of them, but a major one, because obviously they're teaching now and they're initiating people. And they go into trance and channel the person and do weird mudras and try to give Shaktipata through their eyeballs on the videos. I see this kind of thing happening a lot. This is something I would avoid like the plague, definitely like the plague, because that's just kind of probably a little bit loopy rather than the real thing. You know, for the goddess to pick you, for the god to pick you, it's a huge thing. Let me give you an example. The last time that kind of happened in Shaivism, the last few times that we know about, in Shaivist yoga, we could take Dzogchen, any of them, but they're all the same. It's really rare in all the great traditions. Let's see. There was Vasugupta, somewhere between 6th and 7th century. Vasugupta revealed the Shiva Sutras, but he was a super devout person, and Shiva was said to have given him this transmission, right? And how many Shiva Sutras since then? Right, exactly, none. So it's been about 1,400 years or more, and no more Shiva Sutras, because it was that powerful. So that kind of a transmission is powerful. It leaves an impact. It's not like some person on YouTube doing some 30-minute transpossession thing a few times a week to wow the crowd. It just doesn't happen like that. So that's usually people's own pathological psychology acting out in those moments. And in Shaivism, update a little bit to Gyananetra. He was in the cremation grounds up in Uddiyana, somewhere like that, and then he had a great vision of Kali, and Golden Kali gave him, you know, the krama, basically. And that was very powerful. Now, I think what's interesting is they're both rare, and a krama still lasts and it's powerful. But did we see another krama since then? No. Did we see more of the kind of sutras that came out of it and the practices that came out of it? No. So what was interesting is it's rare, and also that both of these gentlemen had great grounding in the tradition to begin with. You know, they're both superior practitioners, very deeply devout, superiorly pure, so pure they could receive this kind of a transmission. And there's female masters in the tradition who also did the same. I'm just thinking of two males that came to mind. So it's not restricted to males, but you see it's rare, and they also had very traditional training, authorized, confirmed by gurus, you know what I mean? That's very different than trance mediums and so forth nowadays, so I'd stay away from that as well. Again, this is advice on picking a teacher, and we have to cover all these. It's very important. One thing I'd also avoid is someone who may have had really good intentions, been really powerful as a practitioner or a revealer, but the system they revealed wasn't finished, wasn't complete. I'll give you two examples. Namkhai Norbu was a person who had many systems completed that he had received, many, but also many that he was receiving during his lifetime. And they were taking years to complete. He would have to have many dream yoga sessions, many waking visualizations that would happen, revelations. Okay, I think I should start now. Okay, so here it is. So leaving off where we were, starting off where we left off, sorry, starting up where we left off. Namkhai Norbu had many transmissions from teachers and completed those systems and could teach them in full. Dzogchen, Tantra, things like that, even Sutra. But then he had many revelations as well. Now, he wouldn't teach them until he had received the entire revelation, and sometimes it took him 10, 15 years to receive the entire revelation, the series of revelations, dharmas, or for him to go finally on a journey to some temple way out in the middle of nowhere in Tibet or India and dig down in a hole. I read one story, and he pulls a text out. He had a dream about it that was in some stupa, and they dug and found this text. So that kind of person is trustworthy because they won't teach it till they have the whole system anyway. So we don't want to have a partial system. Now, on the other hand, Swami Rudrananda, by his own admission, said that the system that he was bringing through, that came from like 10,000 years ago in the Bactrian plain, And certainly he was highly developed himself, and he was developing it as he was going and receiving more as he was going through his life. It wasn't complete when he died. And that's an interesting thing, because I love Rudy work and I use it, but I personally don't see it as a complete system whatsoever. And some Rudy work students who became teachers under Rudy teach it as a complete system. And what's interesting is some of them teach it as the system they learned up till that point in their life when they stopped studying with Rudy and were made a teacher. Others kept going with Rudy, learned a bit more, and still did it as Rudy's. Others yet put a system together after Rudy died by completing what was missing, by taking from other systems and putting it together and what they thought was missing. And then they teach that as a system. So this is interesting, right? So I think I would personally, again, there's no reason when you have light body masters coming from Taoism, Shaivism, and Dzogchen, and all the Mahasiddha traditions, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel if it's already out there. So I would avoid that as well as my main teacher, someone who's not in a fully developed system. Okay, let's see. Now, let's go on to the 7th bit of advice about how to pick a teacher. I think, and these are a little bit shorter than the other ones, I wouldn't pick a retreat hermit. I wouldn't pick a teacher who is a retreat hermit, someone who is unavailable. We talked about fame earlier. Don't pick a teacher who's too famous, because then you never get in close with them, unless you're fated to be that one person who becomes, like in Neem Karoli Baba's case, Dada Mukherjee, who he used to lean on all the time and hold all the time. And that was a unique position. But well, not all of us can have that one unique position with a super famous teacher. So I would avoid someone who's famous, but I would also avoid someone who's like a mountain hermit, who doesn't want you around all the time while they're practicing, whom you can only see for 1 or 2 times a year for like a week at a time or something like that, or a day, or, it may not be that useful. It may not be a best way for you to grow, especially if you're needing a lot more development, a lot more contact time, things like that. The person will have attainment. The person's coming from a great tradition, but they may just not have enough time to teach you and work with you. Okay. Like there's a community in Dalpo in Nepal. It's the highest elevation community of human beings in the world. It's like 23,000 feet or something amazing. And it takes 3 months fully to get up there. Otherwise you get too sick. They have a community up there of full-on Bumpo Tantrika and Dzogchenpa practitioners. Full-on. They wear the garb, they do all the stuff, they're householders, which is really, really amazing. It's really ancient. And there's high-level practitioners up there. But, to get to go have a visit with your teacher when they live a place that high and takes you 3 months to get up there, the only other option would be probably like to try to live there. But if you couldn't speak perfect Tibetan with that dialect they have and everything, and would you even be allowed to stay? I don't know. So again, the idea about the hermit, it's a little more difficult. So yeah, you may find amazingly realized hermits, but can you actually benefit from that relationship? Okay. Better to find a teacher who hermitized for a while, did their practices, came out, and then you get all the benefit. 8th bit of advice on this one, number 8, is try not to pick an abbot, a Shankaracharya or a memory treason, or, a Sakya treason, or like any of these great masters who are head of things, head of monasteries, head of lineages, because they're caught up in the institution. Basically, they're doing lots of institutional work and fundraising and politics and running the place and so forth, and getting teachings from them is very, very difficult. In my case, I know it sounds a bit contrary, because I did go for a teacher who was the head of a monastery, in fact, the head of a whole religion in the 33rd memory treason. But that was fated. I had enough background already where I didn't have to be with him 24/7. And the good part was I used to go at times that were extremely inhospitable weather. So I knew I could have him to myself, and therefore it was great. So I'd get him in the dead of winter and the dead of summer, both times, and there'd be nobody there visiting. So you were guaranteed to have 2 weeks with him 2 months with him uninterrupted per year, which is quite a lot if you already know what you're doing. So that was great. But those situations are kind of hard to find. You have to have the karma for that. So make sure you check with your astrologer, Sukalia, or me, if it looks like you have karma to have that kind of relationship with teacher or not. Otherwise, I wouldn't go for that because it may not suit you. It may not serve. Okay. Yeah, like one time example on the negative for me, even though I have this good chart to meet great teachers and have them want to give me everything and become a lineage holder and all that. I was at Hariharapur Nanda in India, in Karnataka. And the Shankaracharya there came by for a teaching, and I heard that he had some vidya that I wanted to learn. The vidya of the 64 tantric practices that go with the Sandari Lahari, right? This tantric text with 64, related to 64 goddesses, related to Sri Yantra. It's this revealed thing that's supposed to give you, each one gives you a city, and you go through 64 practices. And I thought, cool. So we made a plan, because he's a Shankaracharya and he's the head of a big institution. He's traveling around all the time. We made a plan for me to come back one September, I think in the rainy season, when he wouldn't be busy going around doing stuff, and he'd be sat down right at his home temple there in Hariharapur. And it just never happened. He just was too busy. So we made all these plans, wrote letters back and forth to his people that were secretaries for him and everything, but one obligation after another, and it just never happened. So I never received that transmission from him. So this is why I would avoid that kind of a situation. Someone who's caught up in an institution like an abbot or a Shankaracharya or whatever, Dalai Lama, etc. Ninth bit of advice. Okay, ninth bit of advice is, this one I feel very strongly about, could be in the top 4, I think, but I saved some of the other ones for later to make it more interesting. I believe that a teacher that you're going to take to teach you, now this is going to be a no-brainer for anybody who has any logic and reason, okay? So if this is not a no-brainer for you, you really want to assess how much work you should do on your logic and reason before you go down a spiritual path, because you just might buy swampland from Jersey and get abused by everybody. So be very careful if this makes sense to you. If this doesn't make sense to you, get a live teacher, a living, breathing human being. Okay. I know it's crazy to have to even say that. It would never have to be said in the old days, of course. But now it has to be said, because, again, there are people who feel that they have feelings of a connection to some ancient master who's dead, and that teacher acts as their guru. But then, what is really the definition of a guru then? How could that dead person teach you something? They can't teach you anything. They can't speak to you. Oh, maybe you get an occasional dream and you get some transmission, but that's not like a substitute for 7 to 15 years of apprenticing with a teacher for many, many, many reasons. Let's go through them. First of all, being inspired by a dead saint, a dead guru, a dead lama, some great master from the past is common. They have a body that's very expansive now in a 12-stage view. Because their body's very expansive, they have a lot of power to inspire and to bless. No problem. I agree. Absolutely, they can inspire and bless, and you might be drawn to go to their pitams in India or Tibet, the places where they lived and sat and whatever and taught. Great. I do it too. I do it all the time. I do it for deceased masters. I go to a master who's in stage 11 and sit on top of where he's buried underground and meditate with him. I do all this. But I would never, ever look to one of those masters to say, you're my guru, you're my sat guru. You're the sat guru who initiates me, who gives me guidance on the path, blah, 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 through my intuitions of what you're saying to me, through my dreams. It's flaky. It's just straight up too flaky. There are some examples of this. Now, this gets into kind of a second thing about, are you in a strong tradition, a lineage, and is there really a school there that you're studying in? So let's put these out there. If you're looking at Ramana Maharishi, who I revere completely as a fully realized master before rainbow body, the stage you can get right up to rainbow body. And then after he died, there was a light display. A comet went across the sky as soon as he died, right over the mountain that he used to circumambulate. So you got to take that as a sign that in the after-death state, he probably rainbow body. He probably light bodied to some degree, one level of a light body. Well, there are people who now claim to be from the Ramana Maharishi lineage. And that's interesting because he never initiated anybody. Lineage is a matter of initiation. Initiation, training, realization, passing on after you have authority to do so by initiation, training, realization, passing it on. That's what lineage means, and that's what initiation means. So when you say, I'm in Ramana Maharishi's lineage, you have to kind of go, well, how is that, since he never initiated anybody? And he never had a curriculum, never taught anything, never taught any lessons, never had a curriculum, never had teachings, never wrote a book. Very interesting, right? Never set up a structure, never publicly authorized people to be successors or teachers. So I find it very strange that people talk about this as if there's a lineage there and if he's a teacher. And on top of it, they say Ramana is my guru, right? Ramana is my guru, but I never met him alive. So we run into all the problems that we have with a dead guru. So yes, inspirational, yes, powerful, but cannot function as a guru, period, right? People say it about Yogananda all the time. People say it about Nityananda. Yogananda did initiate people. So if you want to say you're going to be in that lineage and Yogananda inspires you, then go get initiated properly in the Yogananda Kriya lineages or any other Babaji lineages. And then say that Yogananda or Babaji inspire you, right? And go and so forth. But don't say they're your guru, because they're simply not teaching you. It's just not true. And if that's all you have and you don't do the proper lineage thing, then you just end up being kind of flaky. And usually you think you're kind of self-authorized and you have a bit of a God realm complex, or quite a God realm complex. Some people I've met have quite a God realm complex and never even had a guru, but they think they had a dead one. I know people that say Abhinavagupta is their guru. Impossible. Again, Sai Baba of Shirdi is their guru. Impossible. That's not the big bushy hair one, but the real tantric guru who is quite a siddha. Again, impossible. Inspiration, occasional dreams will teach you something, but that blessing kind of a dream does not make them your guru, and it doesn't give you a system to teach after them, right? I had a psychic connection with my first Indian tantric master, a very powerful one. And he did teach me nightly in dream yoga, and he did teach me during the daytime, during meditation. I would often hear an explosion in my mind. I thought a pipe bomb went off in the street, like an IRA bomb or something, but no one else heard it. I would check, nothing was weird. And I would look out my window and nobody was shuttling around. So it was in my mind, and there was gold light and so forth. And he'd be sitting there in a pure light body in 3 dimensions, suspended in space in front of me. And I would have experience of transmission of knowledge, right? And I didn't trust it, which is smart, and logical, because I'm a smart, logical, reasonable, scientific person. And I would then go to India and have it confirmed. Did you teach me this? And also I'd say, look, that mantra was really long. You were trying to teach me. I only got 2.5 of the lines, 3/4 of this line, half of this line, this full line, quarter of this line. Could you fill in the blanks? After they would confirm that it was real and it wasn't my imagination. Because at that time I knew no Sanskrit. I knew no mantras. I didn't even know what Tantra was, actually. It was all new to me. So it was getting confirmed. And this was a very important part for me, that it was being confirmed. And I didn't count those dream teachings or waking meditation teachings that I received in visions as actually really important. And I don't count them as part of the knowledge that I transmit as a teacher of the lineage, because it isn't. It really isn't. It was just stuff for me. So I don't think that really makes or qualifies anybody to say that, oh, I got a dead guru because I have some experiences of them that way, visionary, etc. Right? So you got to go for confirmation if that happens, and it should be with the teacher who actually gives you initiation. And what else do I have here? Yeah, well, in the end, Rudy himself said, dead gurus don't kick ass. So to put it very New York-esque, that's a good way to put it, because what is another great function of our guru is that they're unconditional. Their advice should be unconditional. And that gives an objectivity combined with their wisdom of practice experience and connection to their own essence nature. That's why we go to the live guru, to basically confirm, to receive teachings, to confirm what we're doing on our practice, on our path, make sure we don't go off, which is good to do. We got ourselves as much as we can, but we go for assessment. And I think it's very, very important to be assessed. And this has been covered by myself in many courses over and over again, and why I really love the original yogi tradition, where it has to be living guru to disciple, and you go through practices and you get tested. I was given practice after practice after practice, and I would have to report my findings on whatever was happening with me. And I wasn't told to go to the next one. I wasn't given congratulations, oh, you're doing great. You get a gold star, Johnny, just for doing it. No, I had to get the right result. And if the right result was not forthcoming, I didn't get the next practice. And I just heard, keep going. Basically, they just said, keep going. Not even like, oh, you're doing well. That little bit of gold light you're seeing over here in the corner, that's a sign that no, none of that. Just keep going. Get your butt going and keep going. And I think that's a very important thing to understand. We need confirmation. We need assessment, confirmation, guidance in this way. It's such an important thing. And really, it's a no-brainer for anybody who has any sense at all. If you're going to change your tires, you're going to learn mathematics, just normal practical stuff like that. You have to have someone teach you. Do my compost pile out here. It takes me, 5 or 6 to 10 lessons to teach someone how to do that compost pile. It takes that long just to do a compost pile. So how is it possible that you could get realized without a guru giving you lessons and confirmation and assessment? It's just impossible, right? And having regular contact with them. Okay, great. So a live guru is very important for all these reasons. The next point that I'd like to share with you is that one of these teachers that you want to get, you should strive for them not to be possessed. Oh, you're like, what? Yes. This is something that is not well understood. Okay. I wrote something about this that was quite extensive on a thread, on a group, a non-dual tantra kind of group, and it disappeared. I don't think the person who manages the group really wanted to have it up there. But I wrote something because someone said, is it possible to get possessed by minor Hindu deities? Because I just went to a Tibetan teacher who warned us that we can get possessed by minor Hindu deities that can cause us real problems and obstacles in our practice and our path. So let's talk about that. Yes, you can get possessed by a deity. You can get possessed by a deity, by a minor deity. It's okay to get possessed by a fully enlightened deity. But even that can get to the point where you forget who you are as a human being, and what you're doing on this earth is to actually follow the path of human realization into enlightenment. What is it to be fully realized as a human being? That's what you're really there for on the planet. That's what we're here for. I'm not a god, and I don't want to be a god. But God realm people want to be a god. They want to have bliss, comfort, pleasure, easiness, flow, stay in the flow. They want that constantly unbroken, as if that's a sign that you're enlightened. And it's not. It's a polarized view of enlightenment. It's God realm fixation, and it's quite immature in the end, quite childlike, quite childish. So here's the thing. I do see this. I do see many people being possessed by deities, minor deities, by very strong and large spirits posing as minor deities. And I see people going online with this kind of stuff, doing transpossession. I see them demonstrating some minor cities, magic powers, right? They have some minor cities. Of course, the person didn't get them from their own sadhana. They're getting them from the possessing spirit, the big, strong spirit that looks like a deity, or the deity that's not realized, not enlightened. We call them minor deity. And you got to remember, the minor deity and spirit, they're not in it to help people. They're not in it to help you. They're possessing you because they want to have the experience of incarnation. They're possessing you because they want to have the experience of having sex, of eating food, of fame, all this kind of stuff. And they're eating the energy of the person they're possessing. And when they leave that person, there's nothing left after, right? I think from my own perspective on this, as a person who likes the psychology of spirituality and the shamanic aspects of non-dual spirituality, when the Sai Baba who died recently, who had the bushy hair, who was absolutely confirmed as a very, very perverted and heinous pedophile through over 2,000 testimonies that were published in the London Times, Sydney Morning Herald, many, many great newspapers around the world. When he went to die, the reports were horrific. And the photos I saw, like, wow, he went out, freaked out, emaciated, no cities being demonstrated, which he was famous for, no equanimity, no peace, no joy, no love, no teachings, just a freaked out, shriveled up old guy that some very large minor deity had possessed for a very long time. So that's sad. That's sad for him. It's sad for the devotees he had all around the world who didn't have enough consciousness to see that there was no system there. Look, go through the checklist. That man had no guru. That man was only inspired. That man was possessed. Here's the checklist where it really goes off the tracks. He was possessed. He didn't teach a comprehensive system A to Z. There was no sadhana. I mean, you know, what? No teachings, just blah, blah, blah. And I could do cities and watch me do magic power. And see, Indians are very, very caught up in this thing. They love it. When people do magic power tricks, they just love it. And they flock to that. And they want that as their guru and so on. In general, the general Indian population is enamored with it. Any Indians who are real sadhaks are like, you know, that's not important. So, but they're few and far between. So be careful about this thing about being possessed. And it can also be we have a possession spectrum, right? It goes from influence, where a minor deity or a very strong spirit is influencing a person. It goes from influence to partial possession to full possession. And all the way along, it looks a little different. So someone could be a teacher, and they could be a teacher who's working in a lineage but not authorized yet. Because once you're authorized and you're in stage 7 and above, you'll never get possessed because you know the difference. You know what your essence nature is, and you know what your essence nature isn't. And you wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, especially possession by a deity. That's why when people do deity possession, it's pretty clear, unless they're doing an oracle work for a specific reason within a lineage practice, they're getting possessed because they don't know their nature. If they know their true nature, there's no attraction to being possessed. There's no attraction to cities either, none at all. Maybe even aversion, you know? So we have to watch out for this. It's a very dangerous thing. Someone could be just in the influence part of that spectrum. So that a deity, a minor deity that's not enlightened, they don't know their own nature, that deity, but they are a deity, right? Because all the 6 realm beings and all the other beings in the universe can be fully realized or not. And not knowing their own realization, their own nature, they may influence someone who's a teacher, make that teacher an enthralling speaker, or give them moments where they can perform a siddhi, some magic trick, give you kind of energy. Oh, I feel energy. It came to me so strongly, you know, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's so hooked on this energy thing. Energy feeling is not realization. It's just a state. I'm going to do a whole separate class on this. Realization is not a state of consciousness. It is not a state of consciousness. It is not a feeling. Okay, just to get that back in there. But spirits and deities will give you states of consciousness, give you transposition, give you feelings, give you powers, give you a pumped up ego while they eat your life force energy. Okay, that's what's going on there. It's a very bad trade-off. You know, I wouldn't go for it. So avoid that like the plague. And stick with a human being who has human realization. I think that's extremely important. Okay. Number 11, we talked about before. Let's put it in so it's officially in the list. Progress on the path for you as a sadhak under a real teacher is assessed. It's tested, verbally or asked to demonstrate. The teacher may ask you to demonstrate physically that you've achieved a certain type of practice. You do kumbhak now and hold your breath for 3 minutes, or some of the wild stuff you heard about people ask people to do. Just sit right now and let's see if you can go thoughtless for a while. Okay, let's see if you can control this or that about your experience in your mind or whatever. So if you do deity yoga, or you do having siddhis of the deity and so forth, there's lots of many different experiences that have to be verified. We have a series of inner and outer signs in Mahasiddha Yoga, Tantric Yoga, Mahasiddha Yoga. And the inner and outer signs are there so that you have some sense of, I'm achieving this, I'm accomplishing this step, this stage, you know. And sometimes there are certain like titles or terms that's used for achieving some of these higher, more lofty stages, right? And that term might be used for you at that time, and then you know, okay, so Guruji thinks I've got that now. And you can ask, and you should ask, confirm. Do you think I have that, or were you just being cute and coy when you just said that thing about me as a Vijayadhara? You know, that's a big term, Guruji. You know, do you really, or Lamaji, do you really mean that, or are you just kidding, right? Okay, because you got to be careful. There's something I didn't put in this list, but I should put in there. I wouldn't get with a guru who blows smoke up your skirt, who's always pumping you up and, oh, you're the greatest student. You do so well. They never give you critical analysis, critical feedback, never want to upset you or hurt your feelings. They're afraid to lose you as a student. The teacher is codependent in that case, right? And they're trying to keep you. And they do that by just having this cult of lovey-lighty wonderfulness, where no one ever speaks to you clearly about your limitations in a loving way or in a strong way, like Milarepa got from Marpa, whatever. Both ways are unconditional love and very caring. But if you're with a teacher who's only giving you the lovey-lighty side of everything and only giving you all the good encouragement and that you're doing great, it means you're really probably with the wrong teacher again, because real training in a sport or in martial arts or of course you're going to make mistakes, and of course they have to be pointed out, and of course sometimes you have to be corralled a little bit out of bad habits and get a stern talking to and so forth. So stay away from that kind of thing too. Someone who's only giving you the light and lovey side of things, praising you and so on, probably not a real guru and probably not a real training for you. Actually, they could be a real guru. I've seen this too, where especially I've seen this in Tibetan circles where the Lama is really sweet to so many students that come for the public teachings. And they say, oh, you're my teacher, you're my teacher. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Or she's like, whatever. And they don't initiate you. Maybe they give you a name or something, but that's it. And then you think that's your teacher and they speak sweetly to you, but you never get really private time. You're not taken through deep retreats or anything like that. And then, but the students who are really initiated and go deep with that person, who are set to be like lineage holders afterwards through their training, they get backstage with them, outside in their home monastery or whatever it is, retreat hut, hermitage, and they can have some quite strong experiences with that teacher, giving them a little bit of tough love, right? Different than people see in public. That's quite often, I see that quite often in Tibetan circles. Okay. Back to it. Here we go, because we got a few more minutes and we'll go to questions. Here's what I would avoid too. Teachers who say they're an incarnation of some previous master or deity. If a teacher is really playing it up, that they are Sadashiva incarnated, Kalasamkarshini incarnated, or Avalokiteshvara incarnated, people can say it about them, but if they play it up themselves, that's something that would be a warning sign for me. Why is it not good enough just to be a human being? Why do you have to pump up your resume, with the idea that you're something special? Or a previous master, right? And I've seen that go terribly wrong. There's a Tibetan teacher who abused so many students, so many students. Even his teachers, when he was in his late 40s, I think, called him back to India and said, do a one-year retreat because you really lost the way. He did that retreat. He came out. He kept abusing right up until he died. So he was supposed to be, by his own claim, an emanation of Padmasambhava. And that claim could be disputed, but there it is again. Someone claiming to be an emanation of a great master and then really just being, in this case, a terrible person. Not even a nice person with no accomplishment, a terrible person with obviously no accomplishment, right? But giving nature of mind transmission, teaching Dzogchen all the time, you're like, whoa. And here I'm not talking out of turn. I have personal experience with this person, so I'm telling you from my own. Mostly I tell you from personal experience, actually. I'm usually telling you a story if I heard the story. And then here's the thing, in Tibetan, you should understand this in Tibetan world too, if you're studying with Tibetan teachers. There are truku, what's called truku, and these are people that are reborn masters, and they can be confirmed. They should be confirmed, actually, by a great master. And here's the thing. I wouldn't go out seeking for that kind of person as a teacher, because I've never seen that really work out too well either, to be honest. First of all, they probably have a lot of people around them, a big show going on around them all the time because they are somebody famous. So that doesn't work so well. And here's the thing, just because they are a reborn master doesn't mean they bring with them tremendous teaching skills or high realization, to believe it or not, because I talked at great length to many of my lamas about this, and they said, no, You're born with, let's say you have 11 components of your essence spirit. You're born with 3 or 4 or 7 or 8 at a high level from the previous master. It's never a one-to-one rebirth. So you have to still go through all the training all over again, have all the realizations all over again. I was like, God, it made total sense to me. So the chokus, or reborn masters, who've gone through all the training all over again, submitted to that kind of thing, practiced everything, did the retreats, got the attainment, and they're good teachers. They have the skills of teaching. Then by all means, go for them as teachers if they're available. Again, the availability question. But you have the ones who are enthroned at a young age. And we had a lot of this problem when the diaspora from Tibet occurred. And these Tibetan monks and lamas and monks, yogis, had to leave Tibet. Never did a lot of the big training. Instantly, because they had a big name in the refugee colonies outside of Tibet, in India, England, and so forth, were put right into high positions. And these Rinpoches, immediately are Rinpoche, you know. It seems like anyone graduates Geshe College now in a monastery, as soon as they end up somewhere in some city teaching non-Tibetans, they're immediately a Rinpoche. It's like quite weird to me, because it's not a title, but it is like something that says that you've gone quite high in your attainment. But anyway, these refugee monks, nuns, etc., would come out and start teaching because they were from pedigree. And then they didn't really have the training. So they had kind of view teachings, and they didn't have the real attainment, and they caused a mess. They caused a lot of mess in the world with students. So I'd watch out for that one too. Just because you're a realized master doesn't mean anything. You got to do the training and still have skills in teaching. Most of all, you got to realize your nature, and you got to be humble and want the best for the person all the time. I had a tulku assigned to me when I was first training under my Tsawe Lama, my root Lama, and it didn't work well at all. I was like, this is not working. This guy can't teach. So I asked my teacher, could you please give me someone who's not famous or self-realized as a teacher, a tutor underneath you? Because I know you're too busy, so you're helping me out by giving me a tutor. Can it be someone who's not famous and not realized? I just want someone who's smart and kind and understands the work. And that's what he did, and it worked really well after that. Okay. Let's see. We had a bit of a break there. I'll give you... no, let's stop there and do questions. And then we have a bunch more for next time. So let's stop there and answer some questions. I'm going to scroll back up the list. Oh, the other list is on the other recording. So if you sent a question on the other list, could you please resend it? Because I can't get back to that one right now. I don't know how to do that. Plus, I always ask you to send the questions after I finish the lecture. It's easier for me then. I can see all the questions in one group. So let's see, in one block. Let's see if we can do that. So did anybody send a question in this one? Might be a quick scan here. Let me see. Sukiro, can you write in your questions? What's that?
Scroll down, you'll see Suka's question. She was the only one in the previous chat that sent one in.
Okay.
Just scroll down.
Well, I see one under Louisa sent for Suka.
Yeah, that one.
Some people are so prone to spirituality as a core trait of their personality, right? They have the God gene, they call it. The mystics, the fallen yoginis types, well, actually not just fallen, right? Okay. For them, spirituality is a key interest in their lives, even before stages 4 and 5. Correct. Absolutely correct. They will just feel attracted to and seek sanghas, kulas, sects, religions, gurus, masters, rituals, etc. What place does this TMY have for them when before stage 4? Oh, that's a good question. Okay. So yeah, there is no way that I'm saying that Trikamasiddha Yoga is developed only for stage 4 or 5 beings and up. In fact, I think that's a terrible thing that's out there now, is that 99% of the Indian type of teachers I see that are genuine and authentic, they're used to a system handed down to them that starts at stage 5. The practice is stage 5, or like in Zen training, the practice is stage 7. Can you imagine that? You never get anything else, right? There's really nothing else. So you get teachings, but the practice is all stage 7 practice, and totally unsuitable for a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 person. So how did this develop? How did this happen? Well, people in the old days, thousands of years ago, whatever, hundreds of years ago, they would work through what they had to learn about themselves and the world through stages 1, 2, 3, and 4, just by being in the world, just by having a job, being a hunter, a carpenter, stone cutter, whatever it was. They would learn that. They wouldn't have to get it from their spiritual practice, like a high-level yogic practice. And indeed, high-level yogic practice is not geared at all towards giving you the character development that you need in stages 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you need real character development, real ethics, real morals, a real spine, a real independent power of self-authority, because that's what's needed to recognize your true nature. That's also what's needed in a relationship with a teacher. So a lot of these people were very high adepts before they even found it to the teacher. And then they learned all the stage 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 practices. And that became the system that they would then download to other people. And it was, of course, then only useful for people that were at very high stages. But the more comprehensive systems, and also, let me make one thing clear too. Some of these people who went this route and found the teacher and they entered right into stage 5, they might have already been involved with their local Vajrayana religion that they grew up in, their local Shaiva religion or Taoist religion they grew up in. And being already geared towards spirituality, they were practicing the prayers every day already, learning basic meditations, trying to cultivate being a good person, which is so important to become selfless and good and wanting to cause merit for all beings, that has to really be developed in stages 1 to 5. And that's where the systems come in. Systems like Trikamasiddha yoga, like Vajrayana, like Shaivist yoga when it's a religion, right? They have the methodologies from the first level all the way through to teach you how to become a good person. There are prayers that you have to repeat and chant them and memorize them over and over. Not mantras, not mantra repetition, prayers. There are basic rituals you have to attend to constantly put samskara, psychic impression, into your mind stream of purification and connection to your essence. And all this is purifying your mind and strengthening your mind so that you can recognize your true nature. First, you have to be a good person, become a good character, right? So all that has to happen. Now, if somebody had that happen, like Matthew's question earlier, he's an upstanding citizen. I know this fella. You all don't know him, but he has good character from going through life in a good way, Does it mean he's exempt from learning all the stuff that you need to do along the way to get the good character? No, he should learn it, should go through it, but just a period of time will be much shorter. Why should you learn it then if you already have it? Because it also helps condition the mind towards the Dharma. Because what you learn in life is good and you grow as a human being, and that's irreplaceable, that's invaluable. Character change and growth and development from life itself is invaluable. From meeting hard life circumstances and growing through them, there's nothing like it. Nothing like it. Nothing in spiritual work like it. But on top of that, reconditioning the mind to the Dharma through the prayers and the rituals and all the other things you do, that's extremely important too. A part of the conditioning that has to happen for us to recognize our true nature, to make use of stages 5, 6, 7 practices. Okay, so that has to happen, right? We need to have that. So then when you look at systems, the Vajrayana, the Shaivas, and whatever, when a beginner comes to that system, they're a convert, right? They didn't grow up in the culture of it. They didn't do the religious practices, which would have brought them to stage 5, the entry point into stage 5 anyway. They need to then go through stage 2, 3, and 4 within the system. So then what is that? For us, that's Shakti Shaiva Foundation practice. That's taking their preliminary training, which will be online soon. The foundation training, which is the one person is called Entering the Stream, but the foundation will be online soon. And taking these courses and working on the Shakti Shaiva Foundation practice and practicing some Hatha Yoga. This is all very, very important. The teachings in the preliminaries and foundations will tell you how to develop a better character, how to change into a better person, why that's important, why it's natural, and so on and so on. So it's very important. You could be born with this God gene, as you say, Sukha Siddhi, like I was, and many of us were always drawn to this at a young age, drawn to the sacred. That's a beautiful thing. But then we have to receive the proper training in stage 2, 3, 4, and 5, 2, 3, and 4 before we get into stage 5 kind of practice. Now, sometimes we have this God gene, we have this great aptitude, but we haven't received training in 2, 3, 4, stages 2, 3, and 4, and we go right into stage 5 training. And maybe because that's all the master knows, that and above, or maybe because that's the way his system or her system has done it for so long, or maybe because we convinced them that we're such a great practitioner, we can start at 5, whatever. But then it's very difficult because the teacher is also responding to us as a stage 5 person, meaning they think you want really good, powerful teaching, and they think you want searing critical analysis on the path to make sure you don't fall off, blah, 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 blah. And then when we make a mistake usually and fall off because we don't have the foundation we need in stages 1, 2, and 3, and 4 to stabilize 5, then we fall off and we develop self-hatred complexes, failure complexes, project onto the teacher doesn't like us anymore, or that they're not giving us the attention because they don't like us anymore. And they purely might not be giving you the attention anymore because now you should know what you should be doing. They saw you fail, you saw yourself fail. And what it means is you go back and do the foundation you work that you need, and they would have advised you on that. And then you do better, and that's fine. They still love you the same. They'll still give you the same amount of attention. But now it's like you got to do the basics, and you don't need a lot of one-to-one hand-holding and teaching again because you were brought in at this high level. You're used to that. Like in a case where someone was brought in at a high level, maybe the teacher thought they already had a lot of work done previously because they had been with another master of Tantra before or yoga, and they teach you stage 5 stuff. You don't do well at it. You're not getting the results that you really want. You're not growing. You're not changing. And that turns into a separation sort of between yourself and the path, and self-doubt can come from it, confusion, self-hatred. And at that point, then the teacher will advise you, or you figure out for yourself, I should just go back and work at a lower level, get my foundation up and come back again, because that's normal. That's what everybody does. You're a champion fighter. You want to be a champion fighter. You go in the ring, you get your butt handed to you by somebody. You don't go back out and train the most advanced stuff. Actually, that's what never happens in the fight game. I can tell you because I was in it. You go back and you go, let's re-examine how I stand. Let's re-examine how I move. Let's re-examine how I throw that. What's my mechanic of that punch? Am I doing this right? You go back to basics and you really drill that for 6 months. And then you go into the advanced stuff again and clean up some stuff. So the same thing should be true when we take the spiritual path. There's no difference in that way. Perfect analogy to it, parallel analogy. So what should be avoided at all costs, though, if somebody has a God gene, entered too high and fell, and they're working their way back, is self-hatred or a feeling of being separate or outside of the lineage blessing power. That is really dangerous and ruins your spiritual path. And it's not true. The main thing is it's not true. It's simply not true. You don't lose the love of the lineage masters and the blessing power, and certainly the love and guidance of your teacher. Everybody's human. Everybody goes up a bit too high, it reaches too high at times, stretching too high, and falls down. It happens. All you do is dust it off and keep going. Get back to the basics, plug up the leaks, and keep going. And they will support you in that and give you everything you need in that. But it's important that you psychologically and with good view training, understanding your white bindu. Once you're initiated to a teacher, once you decide you're committed to that system and you're going in that system, you can't fall from it except by consciously going against the teacher, against the system, which some people do. I don't know what they think they're going to get out of that, but they do. So then it means you're still in the blessing power. You're still in the love. Every day in the morning when you do the prayer of awakening, you're receiving your reinitiation. You're receiving your Shaktipata of your initial awakening all over again. You're reenacting it. So you're right in that beautiful power all over again. You're never separate from it. But to fall into the negative psychology of it can really hold you back and cause a lot of obstacles. It's an improper understanding of the view. Celebrate your life. Feel the beauty of it exactly where you are. This is one of the 3 hallmarks of spiritual work. One of the 3 hallmarks of authentic spiritual work is to work exactly where you're at. Not above it, not below it. Don't stretch too far. Don't hold yourself back by doing basics for too many decades. Some point you got to move forward, right? You have to work exactly where you're at. And you and your teacher can easily dialogue around that and come up with where you're at. And then the thing is to have a sweetness and a joy in where you're at, because that's the path. The goal is the path. The goal is not what's at the end of the path. The goal is the path itself. And when you have the goal as the path itself, you're already said to be in a certain state of realization. That's beautiful, right? That's gorgeous. So let's try to have that understanding. That's great. Good question. Is that the whole question? Did I miss it all? Or yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions? Louisa, the teacher tests students to check the level of realization. How do we test a teacher for his or hers? That's a great question. How do you test a teacher for their level of realization? God, it's so hard. I'll be honest with you. It's so hard. That's why I'm giving all these criteria for how to pick, because you have to do the best you can in the end. We used to say when we were kids, it takes one to know one, you know, when we would tease each other as kids on the playground. Because if someone called you, like said something like, oh, you're just a big meanie or a big jerk or something, then we shake our finger at them and say, takes one to know one, meaning you're one too, right? But this truth of this thing is never more true than in the case of our acharya or a spiritual teacher. How can we tell the teacher's level of attainment? Well, to be quite honest, you're never really going to know fully until you have a level equal to theirs or greater. And to be honest, again, I did leave teachers along the way in my path because I grew. I grew, and I'm not sorry about it or ashamed about it. It's just quite strange to say. I grew and I realized that teacher's really sweet. They love me. They give me great teachings. They help me a lot, but I'm growing beyond where they're at. And then I got to go beyond. I got to go find the next teacher. And I didn't take initiation with any of them, and I didn't become like a permanent student. It was just like entry level stuff each time. And I'm glad, really grateful that I did. But then how could I tell that I need to go beyond? It was some inner sense, but it was more than an inner sense. It wasn't that I disagreed with the teacher. So it wasn't like, oh, I had a fight. So, you know, I didn't like that they were pointing out something about my negative characteristics of my personality, my character, and how dare they say that to me? That's abusive, so I'm leaving. No, I didn't do that modern student thing that so many students do when a teacher's trying to help you by pointing out something that you don't like to hear. Oh, I'm obviously more evolved than you because I'm so much sweeter and I'm going to go. No, that wasn't it. My teachers were all nice and really cared for me. And I asked for hard training, so they gave me hard training. I didn't mind. But there were certain points where even the earlier ones who were sweet and conscientious and really trying for my benefit, I believed that through a certain number of years of meditation practice, et cetera, that I got to their same level and they couldn't take me any further. And at that point, I told them I'm going to bow out and go on a search again. And they were pretty cool. And that's the whole point. Usually teachers that are mature are like, sure, go do your thing, you know, whatever you think. If you think you went beyond me or I can't do it for you, then who's holding you back? We don't want to do that. We should always remain good friends and good in the heart with each other. And it's agreed upon for sure. And it is that way with all those teachers I had that experience with. But then there are other teachers that I had that were not good people. And it took me a while to realize that. So in that way, I would look for their behaviors. Were they, as much as I could tell, were they consciously hurting students? You know, that's kind of, I think, kind of difficult to tell if you're a sensitive type person. You might take raising of the voice and emphatic like this of a wrathful teacher explaining something to you where you keep making this mistake, you know, you might take that as being mean or abusive or harmful, because nowadays, if a breeze blows by and it wasn't the right temperature for me, I'm going to sue Mother Nature in the court because I got abused, you know. We're living in that environment now. We have that great famous test case. I don't know if you heard about this outside of America. Many people here writing in from other countries, but in the United States, somebody went to a drive-in window in McDonald's and ordered hot coffee, got the hot coffee, drank it, and burned their mouth, and then sued the company for giving them hot coffee and won. And it was one of the test cases in the legal system in America that opened up the doorway to no one being responsible for themselves anymore. Just no one's responsible. No more do I see this in any other arena than in spiritual teaching. Sure, the teacher absolutely must be a good person who wants the best for the student, who tries the best to teach them, no matter what method they're trying. Their motive has to be pure. Now, so Louisa, how do we tell that the motive is pure? That is so difficult. That's why you got to go look at the behaviors. And at some point, you just got to make a judgment. Well, you know, I think you were beating me up just then, just because you were angry. I think you were physically assaulting me, or, you know, certain things just don't seem like they should be done. Like, let's see an example, no names. There was a famous yoga teacher at that time in the mid 80s. When was it? Early 90s, doing a yoga demonstration in a massive venue in a country outside the United States I used to live in. And the person on stage wasn't performing well, so the teacher went up and literally punched the person in the face, thought they were being bad and not doing what he wanted them to do. And he was so angry, he punched him in the face. And this teacher was known to have an anger problem. That to me would qualify as abuse. To me, that would qualify as abuse because it's just uncalled for. You don't need to ever punch somebody out because they're not doing the yoga posture right or what? So it looks like we're stalled again. It didn't come up on my screen as stalled though. So it might still be recording. So I'm just going to keep going. That's not a response that I think is warranted. And then it could be also just a kind of meanness where you're not considering the person at all. So basically, again, body, speech, and mind, all three, when a teacher is interacting with the student, should be purely for the student's benefit, not to take out their emotions, their anger, their frustrations, not to have the student gratiate them with devotion and love and adulation, or serve them food or give them massages or worse. It's not for the teacher's enjoyment, for their pleasure. It's for the development of the student, right? Is it still on pause?
It's good, you're good.
So I don't know if that was recorded or not. Probably should say it again.
Everyone said it was fine.
Okay, so it showed that it's stalled here. So that I think is really important. So Louisa, I hope this is helping you a little bit. Try to understand how you can tell, because it takes one to know one. The best way to tell, then, let me say, is for you to develop yourself. Develop yourself, develop yourself, develop yourself. And then you'll be able to tell whether the teacher has real capacity or not. Are they really there for you? Are they really in the trenches for you? Are they really trying for you? Do they really love you unconditionally? Or do they see you as some fat cat? Like earlier, I was talking about people being able to identify another person as a previous master. And there's one person who did that recently, and two of my teachers were not happy about this. And they said, yeah, this person identified some young child in a very wealthy family as a previous teacher of theirs. But the real heart student of that person that was supposed to be the reincarnated master, the real heart teacher of that student is still alive. And actually that real heart student is like a famous and very wonderful yogin. And they would be the one who would be picking. But this other Lama, you see, picked because he's famous. He has no other high position. He's just famous for teaching. And when he picked this other person to be this reincarnated master, I believe he abused them by doing so. He abused this 5-year-old child by picking him as a reincarnated master, because I believe that this Lama wanted to get money, because the kid's father was super wealthy. And there was no indications to anybody else in the entire community of religious people that this young person was that newly born realized master from the past. And especially the great master who was the direct student and direct lineage inheritor from that teacher, didn't get any sign, no dream, no sign, nothing that this master was going to take birth again. So that's really bad. Now that's a type of abuse. See that behavior, you start to doubt, like I heard another story that sometimes a spiritual teacher was at a training and then afterwards would ask an organizer of the training to set up dates with the person, dates with certain people in the training and stuff. And that's just wrong. I mean, it's just, you can say, well, they're a human being and they're single and she can date if she wants to, or he can date if he wants to. It's just not the right venue for all that. And that to me is kind of wrong behavior that way. So you have to, and again, it takes one to know one. If you're not realized enough, you're never going to know really where the line of abuse is. The famous story of Milarepa and Marpa illustrates this better than any story we could ever come up with. Marpa was a very wrathful, mean, angry person in his character, but very highly realized. How does that happen? Go down the path and you'll see. There's a personality display that everybody has. He's the kind of person who just didn't tolerate any BS. And he was very, very fixed on, realization, essence, preserving the tradition. He was a no nonsense teacher. And he would not spare you the rod in trying to help you learn, help grow, and so forth. So when Milarepa sought out Marpa, Milarepa sought him out because he was a sorcerer who had already killed people doing sorcery. And he just had this karmic connection with Marpa. Now the karma there was that to control someone like Milarepa, who was already a very highly powerful and successful sorcerer, you would need a wrathful teacher who is powerful and could, not be scared of that kind of person, control them, subdue the demon in them, basically. And that's what Marpa was. And Milarepa, of course, became probably most well-known yogi of all time, and one of the most accomplished. And he loved his teacher, and he loved the training, and he loved what he got, and he had true devotion. True devotion means he took whatever other people on the outside might have seen as abuse, he took as a lesson to learn, and he grew from it. So that's the example we have of like really radical teachers who do radical things, and the student grows to become Milarepa. In that case, you could probably assume that Marpa, no matter how wrathful he was pretty much looking out for Milarepa. Other times, it's not so clear. It's more murky, more cloudy. And you think the person may be just acting out their karma, being a mean person. I know of one teacher I heard of who was, again, hitting students when they were not getting lessons, breaking into their rooms, breaking the little lock on their door, breaking into their room, forcing to have sex with them. I mean, this is obviously terrible. You don't force anything on anybody ever, ever. And the worst thing you could do is make someone be fearful of you. That's not a nice thing. So I guess I just have to ramble on about it like that, Louisa, because checking the level of realization, it's anybody's guess that way. You have to know yourself. But I'd look at the behaviors. I'd look at this many point advice sheet I'm giving you guys here on how to pick a teacher. I'd go with that. Take a few more and wrap it up.
Yeah, those two.
Could you clarify by achieving certain states, does that assist in deepening your realization? The way we train mind training, is that Ananda Bhairavi, Ananda, the way we train classical mind training, the way I was trained, you go through progression of practices, and you will have experiences that are states of consciousness in those practices. These are conceptual practices, and they're meant to produce certain conceptual states. In the long run, what they're supposed to do is pretty much refine for you attachments, refine for you also your sense of what your true nature is by showing you what it isn't. Now, this is what I think is problematic for a lot of people that teach about Shiva consciousness today, and they haven't done enough practice, because they do some practice without a guru, without having received it in transmission, without having it checked by a guru. Maybe they have a dead guru, maybe they have no guru, maybe they get it only from books. And then they don't know. They don't know what their state is because they have no realization of their true nature. They can't measure it against it. It's a state. It's a state of expansion. It's a state of light. It's a state of love. It's in all these states, but they don't know what realization really is. And that's problematic, right? Seriously problematic. So states of consciousness induced by meditation, induced by poisons, drugs, etc., shock, whatever methods we use, they have a place in the system somewhere. But eventually what we're moving into is to recognize our true nature, which is not a state of consciousness. And for that, we need really good pointing out instructions, very good, clear instructions from someone who knows their own state, their state so hard, who knows their own essence. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get. You'll be confused. Crystal. Hi, Crystal. What's the best way to cultivate willpower when willpower is low? Okay. Number one way to cultivate willpower when willpower is low is to get physical. Take up a good health routine of physical exercise. That's number one. Because physical willpower is based on mitochondria power, the little oxidation reduction chambers that are in each cell of your body that give you energy, right? So you want to get physically fit. That's the first thing to develop willpower. because it allows you to focus on something very gross and physical, and you see changes quite rapidly. If you were to do HIIT training within 2 to 3 weeks, you're already so much more fit than you were 3 weeks ago when you were like huffing and puffing going up the stairs. So if you do it slow and gradual and build it up, 2 or 3 weeks later, you have such a great result already. So it's not asking a really long time for you to pursue this practice path of exercise to start to get willpower. Once you prove that to you and you're getting fit, keep with that. That will continue to produce willpower. And then I would say set small goals for yourself that you can achieve. They're doable, and check them off and have them slowly get into greater and greater and more powerful things. Like, let's say I'm going to practice for 5 minutes every morning at 6 a.m. this week. Only 7 days for 5 minutes. Even I'll go back to sleep after, maybe, whatever. You achieve that, and you just up the bar a little bit after that. I think that's what I noticed about willpower. If you take on something too big, you get crushed. It can just defeat us. If we're really a powerful competitive spirit, okay, we'll come back from that, really try harder if we were crushed. But what's better is a smooth and steady climb with willpower. Like when I was younger, I was going to set state record for squatting with weights on my back, right? I was into Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting and all that. So I did this kind of thing where for 3 workouts in a row, I would go up 1/4 of a pound on each side of the bar. So 1/2 pound. So Monday I would put on 1/2 pound. Wednesday I'd put on another 1/2 pound. So I was up 1 pound. And then Friday I would put up, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Friday I would put up another 1/2 pound. So I was up 1.5 pound. And then come Monday again, I would take off a pound, take off about 1/2 pound to a pound. And then I would be actually up overall by 1/2 pound to a pound, but it wasn't this kind of unnatural curve where I was trying to go straight up, a linear progression of success. And then I was able to really continue growing and get so strong in that I added, I don't know, like 80 or 90 pounds to my squatting at that point. At the very end of it, I was squatting 335 pounds for 35 repetitions with the bar on my back where my butt would be on the floor, and I would stand all the way up, and I would do them in a row. And that was a great increase over what I started at in a very short amount of time, because I did it smoothly like this, actually, relatively short, like in 9 months. So develop your spiritual willpower in exactly the same way. Take on spiritual practices very slowly, increase very slowly, keep the physical going the whole time. That would be my advice, right? Another great thing, again, it's back to the physical, but another great thing for willpower is if you have to meet a friend for a workout, you're like 9 times more likely to show up for that workout, right? So you don't want to let your buddies down. In the same way, if you can have a Dharma partner, I'm going to reinstitute the institution of Dharma partners in our school, I don't have a school, but in our, Trikamasiddha Yoga system of practice, because I think it's so useful to have one person that you're really bonded to, that you commit to, you commit completely to as practitioner, you commit to each other, and you can spur each other on and talk to each other when things get tough. That was always a feature of our system of practice for a really long time, but we couldn't keep that up over time. I found that people in the 20s, in my early years when I was teaching like 30 years ago, most of my students were in their 20s, and they would do the Dharma partnership ceremony, but they would end up splitting with them because of personality problems. And I said, man, you really don't understand what a Dharma partner is if you're splitting for personality problems, because it's not about your personality. You don't have to like each other. You have to be able to be clear and care enough for each other to tell them what you really see and take it. It's like hardcore NVC for Dharma practitioners, that you commit to each other, that kind of thing. So we'll bring that back again. That's another great way to keep your willpower strong, because you'll get encouragement, not just like where you're going wrong. You'll get encouragement too, and you'll have someone to check in with. So we saw a flurry of hearts. Must mean a lot of you would like to do that. So we'll do that. That's good. And I think that's the last one. Good. Okay. CrossFit is amazing for that, right? As is many other kinds of martial arts and so forth. Okay, good. So I think we've covered a lot there today. That was really great. We're going to have part 3 of this coming up. The schedule's already up. You know where it is. And we'll cover the rest of the topics under how to pick a teacher at that time. And now we'll chant the Shantipat mantras and share all of the accumulated merit of body, speech, and mind of our practice out to all sentient beings. And this will be up for recording up that you can rewatch and take notes if you want later. Okay? Again, I'm going to use the bell, so if it blows out your mic, you want to turn it down, feel free. Let's chant Shantipat, and if you know the mudras, you can perform the mudras. See yourself sitting in the center of an infinite mandala of beings in all directions, like an infinite sphere. And everyone is sitting there, and they're realized and happy and glowing with self-realization. Let's give out all the energy of our good practice today, receiving the teaching and what we feel change inside ourselves to all these beings, and give out a blessing of peace to the whole world. Asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya sarvesham swastir bhavatu sarvesham shantir bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Varadhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamritat Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Hari Om Tat Sat. May it be so. Blessings of long life to our wisdom masters, those gurus, lamas, daushas. May they continue to guide us and protect us on the path. May we transform every bit of our negative character flaws into the pure perfection of our personality display. And by that, may every action of our body, speech, and mind be offered for the benefit of all beings. May we achieve full realization with the blessing of the lineage masters. Tatastu. May it be so. Shivoham. That says, Shivoham means I am that Shiva essence. I am that essence. Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivoham. Until next time, everybody, give love to everybody.